It goes without saying that being a CEO of a small business requires a tremendous amount of energy and good health, both physical and mental. When you're not feeling well, especially mentally, your business suffers. Throughout my career, I have focused more on the mental side, which I think is a fascinating study. The goal of today's show is to offer some tips on how you can become sharper mentally and as a result, have a more productive business. The source of these tips is the philosophy of a Buddhist monk in Sri Lanka. A good friend of mine, Steve Williams, who is a CPA by trade and a business owner, and his wife were vacationing. When he told me about his experience, I asked him to be a guest on my show because I was fascinated with some of the insights that he had discussed with me that he had via the monk. So here he is. Here's Steve. How you doing, Steve? How you doing, dude?
Doing great, Gene. Doing great.
You been monkized?
Yeah, amen.
So let's start from the beginning. Did you plan to meet a monk? How did this all unravel?
Well, it was actually a pre-set meeting that we had with a Buddhist monk, and not everyone decided to attend. So it's kind of like a, extracurricular activity. But the interesting thing is our tour guide actually plans on joining that monastery once his kids are of age, say 18, 21, what have you. So he was interesting, and the whole topic was interesting, and I was fascinated by it, and I wouldn't miss it for the world. So it was fantastic.
So, in your career, do you believe that a tough mental health is good for a business owner to be successful? You can't be weak mentally.
Well, yes, I do agree with that, Gene, because any business has peaks and valleys, ups and downs.
Right.
And if you allow them to devastate you or throw you off your game or your mission, you're not going to be very focused and very successful, in my opinion. So I do think that mental toughness is extremely important for a business owner, and really for any of us, because regardless whether you own a business or not, we get thrown a lot of curveballs in life every single day.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh
it's
yeah.
a
Well,
matter of,
in my working career, I've always felt that the mental edge was critical, and I've spent an entire lifetime, and I haven't even, you know, what I would say I've arrived in terms of the knowledge of that subject area. That it so much of what we do in business, it's on the mental side. So let's get into the basics. So this monk was taking questions, and what were some of your questions?
well, my questions were
Or let's
basic.
just say key takeaways. What are your key takeaways?
Yeah, key takeaways were lower your expectations to be more content and to be happier. And I had already been practicing this. And once I heard the monk say this, it just really confirmed what I had already been doing, and really made me realize the power of doing that. And, normally we do this probably subconsciously. We set our expectations very high for most people in our life, especially those closest to us, probably our spouse, our children, our business associates, our friends.
Right.
And what happens when we do this, we set ourselves up for unhappiness and for letdown continuously, because people all have their own path. They have their own things that go on in their life. And, meeting our expectations is probably not one of them. So we, say with your own spouse, we kind of expect them to read our mind, to know everything that we think, to know our next move, to know what we like, to know what we want. It's impossible for anyone to accomplish that, but it doesn't stop us from having those expectations. And
Okay, that makes great sense, and that's both, I would assume, both in a personal or business level.
oh, absolutely, because on a business standpoint, you've got customers, you've got potentially other co-owners, you've got employees, and all of those people this pertains to. Because if you have your expectations so high with any of them that you don't allow a mistake, because no one's perfect, and if you have that bar set at that level, you're going to be unhappy and dissatisfied a whole lot. And
Okay,
so it's really a matter of resetting that expectation. Now, again, you keep your expectations for yourself as high as you would like, because you're in
okay,
control of that. But for all others in your life, lower them tremendously, and
all
you'll
right.
be more effective.
Okay, that makes sense. Let me play the devil's advocate then, and maybe I'm reading this wrong. Would that attitude as an owner of a business who is lowering their expectations, does that mean in your mind, based on the conversation with the monk, that you're okay with mediocrity? That
No,
your
not at all,
employees are
G.
not meeting your snuff, they're not meeting their standards, or
No,
what?
I think as a business owner, we all have the right that's been earned to set our goals and our aspirations to whatever level we choose. And obviously, someone needs to meet whatever our baseline performance level is, or we're likely not going to choose to work with them any longer.
Right, right, right.
But once they've met that baseline of performance, you have to be realistic that they're human, they're not perfect, they're going to make mistakes. And now it's up to us as business owners to decide, is this normal in the course of business, or is it happening too much to where their effectiveness is not at the level you would like, and maybe a replacement would be necessary. So I don't think accepting mediocrity is any part of lowering your expectations, but I think just being realistic and allowing error and learning lessons to come in. And if someone continues to make the same mistake over and over, they're probably not going to be good for your business. But
Okay, so you're not saying don't have expectations, just keep them lower so that you don't get disappointed a lot.
well, yeah, I mean, be realistic. Be someone that allows life to mix into your plan.
Right.
And that to me is the key, is just because that keeps your mental acuity high. And to run an effective business, you need that. You need high mental acuity, and you can't be thrown off, to everything that occurs. And having employees myself for most of my business career, there's going to be a lot of instances that we have that you're not going to be happy and you're not going to be satisfied with the performance or the result or what have you. But realistically, what I come back to is, could the next person do any better?
Right.
And I have to keep resetting that, because I've been doing this for 35 years, and the person I'm working with probably doesn't have that level of experience. And even if they do, they might not have the same vision and mental acuity that I do. So I just have to be realistic for getting the best from that particular person, not necessarily comparing it to myself or some other star performer somewhere that I had, in the past, or that I've dreamed up I'll have in the future. My goal is, as a business owner, is to extract and work with that person to get the maximum performance from them. But part of that is not including a mistake-free experience.
Well, that's been in my career, that's been my weakness, is because I've always been a type A, and I'm sure there's a lot of type A CEOs listening right now that for the most part, people don't behave and act in the manner that you wish that they would.
Very true.
And it's just inevitable. So, but let me shift gears on you. So what other point did the monk bring up that you thought was a nugget that you said, yeah, that makes sense to me. I'm going
Well,
to try and incorporate it.
one interesting one, Gene, was someone asked the monk what the purpose of life was.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're all on pins and needles waiting for this, nugget to, burst upon the scene. And he kind of took the air out of the balloon because he said, there is no purpose of life.
Interesting.
And that took me a little bit to process. But I understood it once I did process it, because to me, the main purpose of life would boil down to helping others. And we all do that in different ways. We can do it with our business. We can do it with our, our personal life. We can do it by being kind to others, being forgiving. And so that was also something that made me think, because I wasn't ready for that response of there is no purpose to life. But the more I thought about it, and I'm a religious person myself, but I don't think that anything other than following, love thy neighbor as thyself is probably, anyone's purpose in life. I don't think a CEO was somehow made to be a CEO or to be a leader of men or women or to run a company. I mean, those are choices they made, opportunities that came before them, but I don't think it's a life purpose. And
but that was all he said, is that life has no meaning.
Well, I mean,
was there something behind the scenes that?
No, I mean, to be honest with you, I'm pretty sure that every person listening to that question was expecting a different response.
Yes.
And
yes.
I was myself, I got to be honest with you.
Right.
But once I took it in and thought more about it, I said, that was a brilliant response, because I cannot come up with a better one. And I've had now a couple months to think about it, to do it. And I think it was right on in my viewpoint.
It's still hard for me to grasp that there's no purpose to life, other than the obvious. If you're, as a religious person, you're, as you have stated, to help others, and then it's by definition your family. You're going to love them, your family and friends. And
I agree.
But that is an interesting response. I wouldn't be prepared for that you would have to state that.
Nor was I, believe me. And it really put me into serious thought for some time after that. But I haven't been able to come up with
we're
answer.
Zombies moving around, believe in the afterlife?
No, I doubt that. But okay. Another thing, Gene, that he mentioned, one of my key takeaways, was have no attachments.
Okay.
And which
physical or
any sort, physical, mental, you have to just experience life as it is, and not, like, if you really like your home or your car or this, article of clothing or this pair of golf clubs or whatever it is, you have to be willing to say, I don't need that. I'm not attached to it. My life would be just as good if I didn't have that.
Right.
And so, obviously the monks are pretty good about that, because they don't have much, they
by choice.
By choice, yes, they pretty well have, disavowed, any, wealth or any pursuit of, monetary gain. And what he mentioned was his reason for entering the monastery was just to understand the way his mind works. So he's on this lifelong journey of understanding how his mind works. And which, again, I don't feel driven to that same, I don't feel like I need to find a monastery and join it. But it is intriguing to me of the choice that they've made and responses that they provided. And, the biggest one for me was, again, confirming my, practice of lowering my expectation. And again, I've shared this, Gene, with countless people since I came to the realization myself. And I'm not so sure that too many people have actually taken it seriously. And I'm okay with that, because the only reason that I did it was for my benefit. I wasn't really intending for it to be, utilized, but I don't ever miss an opportunity when I see someone that I feel is making their expectations of that event or person or circumstance, that's causing them unhappiness. I'm quick to share that if you would consider lowering your expectations, you'd be a happier person and you'd be a more effective person.
Right. So let me go back to the attachment. So what was the monk's view of the pros of attachments and the cons of attachments?
Well, I don't think that question was asked, Gene, so I guess I'll have to.
So what's the good or the bad about having attachments?
Well, I think in my viewpoint, the bad of having attachment is it's a crutch. It's a dependency. It's something that you're attributing that thing to your happiness. And that thing truthfully has no impact on your happiness, meaning whatever it is, if you didn't have it, you could be just as happy as if you did have it. And so to me, that's my interpretation of what he was saying, was just, don't be attached to anything.
Well, now let's take it back to my audience. They own a business. Maybe they're attached to their business because they want it to be successful so they can feed their family. It's a little fuzzy for me to understand that statement. How could it be beneficial to an owner
I'll give
to
you
not be
something
attached to their business?
I'll
They
give you
have to
something.
be.
I'll give you something, Gene, that I feel, and I read this in a book called The E-Myth years ago, and I thought it was brilliant. David Maister is the author, and he said, the only reason to start a business is to sell it. And the minute he said that, I was young at the time. I'd probably been a business owner for 10 years or less. And it really struck me that I don't know if I agree with that statement. And why would he say that? I'm not looking to sell my business, but there was a lot of wisdom in the statement, because at some point in time, you will want to sell your business because you're not going to be able to perform for, we all have a limited work span, lifespan, and your performance as you age will decline. And so if you want to have a good plan of exit from your business, you probably need a succession plan, which normally involves selling that business to someone.
Right.
So again, if you're going to sell it, you have to release your attachment to it, because somebody else is going to carry on. Now, if you truly are so attached to your business that you say, well, I can't bear for anyone to run this business other than me, guess what? Your business dies upon your exit.
Sure.
And there'll be no value there. There'll be no payoff. There'll be, no return. And if that's the case, why wouldn't you just work for someone? It'd probably be easier. And, one of the big reasons that most entrepreneurs start their business is to get a payoff, that they think that they'll be more successful than if they worked for someone else, and there's risk.
Yes.
So why shouldn't there be a payoff attached to it?
I get that. Okay. All right. So don't have expectations. Don't be attached to assets. There is no meaning to life.
Yep.
Was there any other gold nuggets that he shared with you and the group that you were with?
those are the ones, Gene, that struck me. If there were others, I, didn't record them. And, I was probably just deep in thought on my own, confirmations of what I had found that he shared. But again, it really was rewarding for me to hear him repeat what I had been practicing for, at least a few years in my own life. And it kind of hit me that, wow, I think I was onto something. And again, I did it just strictly for my own selfish reasons, that I didn't want to be unhappy at different points in time. And so I just realistically said, here's what I think I need to do to accomplish that. And I started doing it. And I can tell you, Gene, it tremendously increased my contentment and satisfaction and happiness.
Both business and personal?
Well, I think the two, Gene, are very related.
Okay, so give me an example. Give me an example of something.
Well, sure. One example would be my son.
Okay.
My son is now a married man.
Yeah.
Which means there's a whole new family that comes into our lives when this event occurs.
Yes.
What normally happens is the married couple have two families. They have yours and theirs.
Yes.
And so when holidays would come around, I would be very uptight that I wanted to make sure that my side of the family got their, time that they should have.
And he has,
we'll call it split the baby.
And he has children too, right?
He does.
So you have two grandkids. Okay.
Two grandkids.
Okay.
So I found myself getting very anxious and having pretty high expectations for these holidays. And when it didn't work out exactly the way I wanted to, I was pretty miserable.
Okay.
And I just decided that I needed to adjust something. And my expectations were the most logical thing I could come up with. And that my son is an adult, he's smart, and he can make decisions on how he spends his time. And I'm sure there's reasons for it. And I don't really need to get involved in all those reasons. I just know that whether I see him for 5 minutes or 5 hours, that it's okay. Because my expectation is that he'll figure it out. He'll do what's best. I don't need to ask him 1,000 questions, say, well, is this why you're doing this? Or it doesn't matter. The bottom line is my expectations are that he'll spend the time that he can spend, and I'm going to be okay, whatever it is.
Okay. We may have already discussed this, but how would you use that knowledge or insight in your practice as an owner of your own CPA firm?
Well, I can tell you, Gene, how I do it is I allow my employees to make mistakes.
Okay.
And when they do make a mistake, I don't, chastise them. I don't threaten them. I don't fire them. I try and make it a teaching moment and expect that they will learn the lesson and they will improve upon that behavior. And if it turns out that, time and time again, the same mistake continues to happen, I'm probably going to not continue to employ them. Because, I have to run a business. I'm not a university, a teaching university. And I have to, reduce the time I spend doing tasks and pass that on to my customers.
So my listeners out there, business owners, as it's all wounded together, your own experience, your discussions with the monk, one of the things that they could do is to allow their employees to make mistakes if they're taking initiative, because it's a teaching moment, and maybe not expect that they're going to be rock stars all the time. Accept their failures and take witness to their strengths.
Well, yeah, I think there's a lot of merit in that, Gene, because too often in business, we focus on someone's weakness and we spend more time on that than their strength. And chances are, if it is a weakness, the best that they'll get to will just be average. It's
Right.
probably not ever going to be above average or excellent, but in their areas of strength, they're probably operating at above average to excellent. And so, where do you want to spend your time? I mean, it's not on the weakness because, they're only going to be an average performer at best. You better go focus on their strengths where there's a higher upside and more to gain for you and the business.
So let's talk about expectations with employees, and let's categorize the employees by the soft skills versus the standard analytical skills. I'm just using you as an example because you run a CPA firm, but it could be any company. Whatever their expectations are, or the owner's expectations are in terms of the talents required. But there's also the soft skills involved. And I've always believed that these soft skills are as critical and sometimes more important than the skills of the profession that they're in.
No, Gene, I agree with that. And one thing that I preach all the time is you can't teach attitude.
Exactly. That's a critical soft skill.
You can teach skills to almost anyone. And
right.
if they work on that skill, they can improve it. I'm not so sure that anyone has perfected the teaching of attitude. It seems like it just is inherent in someone's being that they have a certain perspective and a certain attitude. And I don't have any confidence that I am going to be able to greatly impact that. But I know that I can teach them skills. So on the attitude side, I better take notice of that before I hire them.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
If for some reason it doesn't meet expectations after I hire them, I probably should consider, moving past that relationship as quickly as possible, because you're probably not going to have any great impact in changing it in your tenure with them, in my viewpoint.
Well, I mean, 100% correct in my opinion. I have had many employees that I managed, and I am sure that all of the business owners out there have employee numbers anywhere from 1 to 25 to 50 people. And some of them get how critical it is to create an atmosphere where employees want to stay, want to flourish, want to get better. But what I've found, and maybe my listeners would agree with me, is that I would rather have an employee with a fantastic attitude and personality and teamwork approach with modest skills than someone with superior skills who's a badass, who thinks he's all it and creates friction and creates disharmony in the workplace. That's just my thought. As long as they're good enough to get the job done, if they're a good person, I'll hire them.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I can't speak for all my listeners, but I agree with you that once you get past the basic skills, it's the soft skills which are critical.
No, I agree wholeheartedly. And I think that, those are, I think they call that emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
And that is so important for the workplace. And, you can be a really talented individual, but if you don't have emotional intelligence, you're going to be a bad teammate. You're going to create chaos. You're going to create selfishness, and no one's going to want you on the team. And you're going to negatively impact others' performance. So as talented as that person could be, you probably need to, move past them.
Yeah, and I've seen it in action. I've had so many clients over the years where, they were complaining about the cash flow, and The real cause of the headache was not the cash flow, it was the employee culture.
Mm-hmm.
It was a mess.
No, I understand. I agree. And so, I'm a firm believer that we all, have made the bed that we lie in. And it's up to us to improve that bed and to improve the work environment that we choose to work within. And that has to do with our hiring policies, with our, culture that we create at the company. And that's all up to us. And our people are our biggest strength. And I know our business, a professional service business, we don't have, material and, things of that nature. We have, basic human capital. And
Right.
So I know for a fact that my employees are my business. And it's up to me to, get them the best training, get the most from them, and also have them the most content and happiest that they can be. Because I'm a firm believer that the happier your employee is, the more performance you'll get from them. And if someone is having a life event that impacts their happiness, they're not going to be as effective at that time. If they're
Right.
physically ill, or their, child is ill, or their, something has happened in their life, their house is burned down, or whatever the circumstance is, those are moments that are going to cause you unhappiness. And you're not going to be at a peak performance level. And you're probably better off being away from the business at that time, because you're not going to be able to serve the business
Right.
or anyone else, because you're not, you don't have it together at that time.
Okay. So Steve, let's wrap this up. So uh with using the insights that you have developed on your own in terms of being a business owner over the years, your meeting with the monk, your current attitudes, um, what should the business owner take from this show today? Maybe just two sentences that could make them mentally stronger, and then it ultimately would be reflect in the productivity of their business.
Well, I think the key, Gene, is lowering expectations for everyone around the business owner other than themselves.
Okay.
And that is going to be paramount to the success of that business and the mental health of that business owner.
So that's pretty simple then. That's
Very
pretty
simple.
simple.
Very
Lower
simple.
the and so whatever, if his or her expectations have been lowered and they happen to exceed that, that's just a cherry on the sundae. That's just, hey, whoopee, I got it. Great.
Well, no, yeah, you're right, Gene. You celebrate the victory, and you tell yourself, well, that's great, super. I'm very happy for that. But it didn't necessarily mean it was an expectation.
Yeah.
Because if
Yeah.
your expectation is, lower than that, you're very pleased when the result comes in at a higher level.
Yeah.
But, you're protecting against the times when it doesn't necessarily go the way you want it to. And now, you can really be thrown off, and it can really be distracting for a very long time period if you've put your expectation at a level where you're a mess after this event occurs.
Yeah. No,
it,
I agree.
it could
I
take
got
you
it.
it could take you a full day to reset yourself. And
Yeah. Now, is there such a thing as a monk in residence or a monk in training? Have you thought about that? Are you going to pursue that, or
no,
you think you've
no,
got enough?
I do, because again, my change in perspective was really a personal decision that I made, because I wanted to be less frustrated and less anxious and more content. And it took my meeting with a monk to get me to understand that I was on the right path, and even make me that much more, adamant in sharing, that philosophy when the opportunity arose.
All right.
So
that's great, Steve. So, okay, well, that's it for today. I would like to thank you again and indicate to my audience that today's show would be available through normal podcast directories or as a video on YouTube. I would also like to thank my sponsors, the Small Business Development Corporation of Orange County and the IE, and also my other corporate sponsor, Desmond and Lewis, which is a full service marketing agency. And this has been good. So I'm going to leave your contact information on the show notes. And so in case anybody wants to contact you for further insights on the visit with the monk, I'm sure you would be available. So
yeah, I would enjoy it, Gene. So feel free, and I'll look forward to any future conversations that would arise in that topic area.
Yeah, so it's easy. I'm going to lower my expectations starting today.
Great.
Then I won't be so frustrated.
That is true, my friend. That is true.
Because my goal is world domination.
All right.
All right. See you later, Steve. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
This has been CEO to Rainmaker with Gene Valdez. To find out more, like us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. If you have questions, email the show. Find that link and others in the show notes. Thanks for listening, and join us again next time.